to everybody who is here today for our very first roundtable discussion of women in vaping here in Canada. I wanted just to let everybody know I was inspired by a Zoom meeting that Helen Redmond, who is one of the panelists here today, had. I think it was right before Christmas when she gathered a group of women together to discuss different obstacles and different issues that women have, not only as consumers, as business owners, as advocates. And I just thought, it would be really nice to bring together a group of women here and we can discuss this together in this type of forum on National Non-Smoking Week here in Canada, which is a big deal. And I just want to say we are trending when we're talking about vaping on Twitter, which is great. So a little bit of how we're going to see this go today. I'd like everyone to sort of go around, introduce themselves, a little bit about who they are and how they learned about vaping, or like how they're involved in tobacco harm reduction. And then we can go on and discuss some other, like some topics that we each think are very important. And it'll just be like more of an organic flow. So I guess I'll just start. My name is Marion Papaioannoy. I started vaping 10 years ago now. From vaping, I quit smoking almost instantly. I went into owning a business. And for me, owning a business in the vaping industry means I have to advocate. I have to be an activist because the people who come inside of my store and I help them trust me. And they trust me to be able to continue to help them stay smoke-free in the way that they choose. In Ontario, I got into activism because I'm really good at organizing a protest. So I organized a couple of protests here. We've continuously been able to, in the province of Ontario, push back on prohibitive regulations. And over the last 2 years, we've taken this and started a movement, Rights for Vapors, which is right across Canada. And we're just doing what we can every single day to ensure that there's access for vaping products for anyone who chooses, any adults that choose in Canada to have access. We are a diverse country. We have isolated communities, and not everybody can order online. And there is not a vape shop available at every corner like there are in the highly populated communities. So it's really important that we continue to have access to flavors and to the product itself. So I'm just going to go around based on my screen. So Amanda, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Really happy to be invited here today. I do a lot of different things in the vape sphere. I am a vapor. My husband and I both quit smoking with vaping, and it was a really important journey for me because, I had cancer when I was 19 years old, and I have very clear memories of sitting outside waiting for radiation treatment, smoking cigarettes, just because even though I was fighting cancer, I was still unable to quit smoking. And I continued to smoke for 10 years after that. I tried to quit many, many times with all sorts of different methods. And, like most people, the only thing that really worked for me was vaping. Same for my husband. He quit a 2-pack-a-day cigarette habit. And, we opened our business because we thought the products were really revolutionary and we wanted to make them available to people in our community. That was 10 years ago now that we started our business, and it's really grown from there. We have 6 retail locations at this point, and we do a couple of other different things in the industry. We manufacture e-liquid as well. Just from that experience of being a vapor and being a business owner, I run several of our advocacy groups in the United States, our state level trade associations in both Arizona and Colorado. And then I'm the president of the American Vapor Manufacturers Association, which is a very female-led effort. 4 out of our 5 board members of AVM are women. And that was an effort that we started back in 2019 based on FDA actions to really shut down the independent vapor industry here in the United States. And our focus has grown from taking on the FDA to taking on Bloomberg, the misinformation machine there, to taking on some of these tax fights and supporting our state groups. So we do a lot, and it's my honor and my privilege to be in this fight, and happy to be here with all of you today.
Thank you, Amanda. Helen, you are next on my screen.
Okay. I think I should start out with an apology because it's not a lot of fun to be neighbors with the United States, which is engaged in yet another drug war. And this time it's against nicotine. And what happens in my country and Amanda's, unfortunately crosses that border and influences the politicians in your country. So I'm really sorry about that. We're really trying to do something to stop that. We haven't been as successful as we would like to. So I'm going to start with an apology to my Canadian sisters. So I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been working with people who use drugs for many, many years. And I've been a harm reductionist that whole time. And we use harm reduction with every other drug that we are working with people around. And I just came to tobacco harm reduction 2015, 2016, when a colleague of mine had gone to Germany, and she was a smoker, her husband was a smoker, and they found vaping products in Germany, brought them back. And she and I were working in harm reduction based housing in Brooklyn, and everybody smoked, and they had given up a number of other drugs, but would often say, just let me have my cigarettes. It's legal, not going to end up in prison. Just, I like it, leave me alone. And we decided to offer people vaping products. So that was my introduction to vaping, was through a colleague. And then I and several others organized a conference in Brooklyn in 2016, the first conference actually in the United States, that focused on nicotine smoking in vulnerable populations, because people who have the highest rates of smoking are not really of much concern, unfortunately, to the leaders in our country or public health or whatever entity that works around tobacco cessation, et cetera. And then the success rates are not very good with the typical NRT. So we had this conference, and it was really great. It was small, but a sense of mission that we are going to help the most vulnerable people make this switch. We're not going to let them be left behind. It's not fair. And so that's one thing that I do, but then I'm also a journalist. So I've been writing about tobacco harm reduction now for maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's been a fight, as I'm sure all of you here know, because the mainstream corporate media is really, they've coalesced around a narrative that vaping is a big tobacco plot. All the junk science they publish, they don't quote tobacco harm reduction experts like all of us on this call, and then a whole layer of other people, including men. And it's pretty frustrating to see the media doing this. And of course, whipping up drug panics and hysteria, the whole teen vaping epidemic that never was. So I'm involved on that level too, about writing about tobacco harm reduction, vaping, I'm in that space as well. And it's frustrating, but I had a conversation the other day with somebody. I feel like we had made a little bit of progress. It's an uphill battle still, but I think there are some positives that we can look at, and maybe we can talk about that later.
Thank you. Brandee, you are next.
Hey, a little bit about myself. I don't have nearly as impressive a bio as the women ahead of me. I'm primarily a consumer activist in the vape space at this time. And I came to vaping through my husband. There's nowhere in my background with anything to do with this. I was a microbiologist before we moved where we are now, and got involved in vaping because my husband opened up a shop after quitting smoking with through vaping. And initially, I'll be honest, I set some very firm boundaries about where he could keep his vape. And I wanted it well away from me. I was quite a dedicated smoker, And like Helen said, I was one of those people who felt like I don't do anything else. I'm only smoking these days. So I really didn't want to hear about it from anyone. But my husband, Shane, had quit smoking through vaping. And that was something he was able to do immediately upon taking it up, as was his dad, who was recommended to vape through his oncologist. He had cancer at the time. And he's doing well today. I'll just shorten that. He's doing well today, and he no longer vapes or is dealing with cancer. So I've had a couple family relationships where people had quit smoking through that. And initially, I mean, this was back in the day of the cig-a-likes and the cartomizers, really messy, kind of inefficient systems. But Shane, while being respectful of my desire not to quit smoking, kept kind of offering, well, this smells really good. I think you'd like this. So I kind of got into it from the flavors side of things. And I joined him in the business not long afterwards, because I was enjoying interacting with some of the customers, which was kind of a new deal for me, getting involved with people who were quitting and looking for a better experience with their vape. And I was able to talk to them and get to know a little bit about them and their stories. And around, 7-8 years ago, I had heard that Health Canada was pushing back against this thing. And that's what activated me, because I was shocked that this technology is something that had helped me to quit smoking, despite my not wanting to, had resulted in my husband quitting smoking, in spite of him smoking for decades, and his father. That Health Canada would be pushing back against this was kind of shocking to me. And that was the start of my journey in activism in vaping.
And also, she has a fabulous blog. She writes some really great pieces as well. Saddle Horse Blues, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Just need to add that. And now we're going to move on to Marion.
Okay. Yes, I was a lifelong smoker. I started smoking at 19, and I smoked for almost 40 years. And I did stop several times over the decades, generally through books or just mental strength, stubbornness. But I was back smoking, and this is one point that is really important to me, is that one of the reasons I always fell back to smoking was that I packed on the weight as soon as I stopped the smoking. And I do believe that nicotine has something to do with that. And when I started smoking again, I lost it, and I was more comfortable. I was happier in myself. Anyway, I was smoking, and then my doctor told me about 8 years ago that I was showing signs of COPD, and gave me a prescription for Champix. And I bought a box and read the label and saw the warnings about violent thoughts and depression. And I thought, I'd rather die of smoking, so I threw it out, but I started doing online research. And I hadn't heard much about vaping. This was almost 8 years ago. But I did look, and I learned about the great success rate in the UK for smokers. So I looked around and found an online vendor of vapes, and I ordered a very simple and cheap starter kit, 2 starter kits, and a bottle of apple and a bottle of tobacco, just in case. And they arrived, and I smoked my last cigarette while the first one of those was charging. And I took my first puff of apple, and I knew I would never smoke again. And I have not. I just stopped instantly. And I just loved it. I loved the different flavors. And, I bought a variety. My approach to activism is simply this. There weren't many vape stores around in Toronto at that time. But I did rely on them very much, because, I didn't even know what a coil was. And so when my vapes died, I went out and bought another vape and was then really surprised when it died 3 weeks later, this sort of thing. But then when I found some vape shops, they were so wonderful, gave me so much support and advice, and they kept me vaping. I retired not long after this, and this was about the time that the politicians were starting to crack down on vaping or get worried about it. And I thought I couldn't think of a better cause for me to devote my time to. And I like speaking and I like writing. And so I figure if I can use those things to help smokers become smoke-free, then my life is worthwhile. And that's why I'm an activist.
Thank you, Marion. Okay, and finally, Yolanda.
Hi, my name is Yolanda Watson. Where do I start? I just kind of give you a background in regards to why I'm so passionate about advocacy. I graduated from Fleming College with my paralegal's diploma. I wrote my P1 and I'm licensed under the Law Society of Ontario. And then I forwarded my education. I went to university and I got an undergrad in legal studies with the intentions of going to law school. Huge passion of mine is always giving a voice to those people who, one, don't understand, or two, just don't have that voice. So that's where my passion for advocacy is driven. I've known this for a long time, but I remember a girlfriend of mine, she approached me and she said, like, Yoli, you have to try this. I'm vaping, it's going to help you quit smoking. We're going to do this. We've got this, and she took me to the vape shop, and the vape shop was amazing. They took the time, they educated me about the device and the e-liquid and the nicotine and stuff like that. However, I ran into an issue. I got frustrated because the mod that I got was leaking. Whoever invented the products at that time didn't think that women put them in their purses, and they leaked everywhere. And honestly, after like 3-4 months of doing this during the summer months, you would pull your mod out and it was all over your hands, and you'd be driving your car, or you'd go to a meeting and shake somebody's hand and it's full of oil. I was just fed up. I was like, nope, not doing this. Returned back to smoking. I was like, nope, we're done. Then I met a female shop owner. I had the opportunity to meet this woman and she was amazing. And she asked me, she's like, do you vape? And I said, I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. It's frustrating. It leaks. My purse is always full of e-liquid. Like, this is disgusting. It's horrible. She told me that day, I'll never forget this. She's like, I've got something for you, the Aspire Play-Doh. And she was using it at that time. And she was like, I put it in my purse. It's upside down. I was like, you know what? I'll try it. Because the short amount of time that I vaped for, those 3 months, it was working for me. I didn't smoke. But the fact that it was inconvenient for me, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I tried this Aspire Play-Doh and I'm smoke-free since then. I'm very grateful to that lady who experienced the exact same issues that I had in regards to a leaky mod. And it was amazing. So vaping for now, I think 6 years, and going through all of the provincial and federal regulations that have come down on vaping, why wouldn't I stand up and give a voice to those who are voiceless, or stand up for the things that are right? For all of these years, we've always heard, we don't know the long-term effects. We don't know the long-term effects. Well, all those people who we were with, who we stood up with, knew that this technology actually worked. And you know what, that really drove me, that really drove that message. And then over the time I got to meet Maria. Yes, Maria was, the person who was always the face of like, okay, let's go. We're going to fight the government. We need to get these regulations stopped. Well, eventually I got to meet Maria and learned that she lived very close to me. And we built a relationship. And honestly, every time there's something that comes out in regards to vaping, it's a phone call away. Hey, what can I do? Where do we need to go with this? And during the pandemic, everyone's worried about going out and masking and all this stuff. Well, we went over to Dave and Maria's for a birthday party. And I honestly thought Maria was joking, but she's like, we're wrapping an RV. We're going to go and do this. She's like, I just need a driver. And I looked over at my husband and I'm like, you know what? She needs the driver. If nobody else signs up, I'll do it. And he's like, I don't understand. So I took that passion. I took that passion for advocacy, and I took the time, and I spent, I don't know, was it 30 days on this RV, and we drove through Quebec and Ontario. And honestly, that really ignited a whole new perspective of advocacy for me. Just seeing truly how society perceives everything that's going on is really, really important to me. And there's a lot more work that we need to do to inform and educate these people. But then there's also a lot more work we need to do to actually empower every single person out there who is a vapor or who has a family or friend who supports them in vaping. Like just educating these people is huge. So yeah, I've been in the scene for a while now. I don't know, 6-7 years. I'm part of Rights for Vapors. I'm the crazy Big Bertha driver. And I appreciate and respect all of you ladies out here. There's some really interesting things we can talk about. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Yolanda. I am like so thankful that you joined us this summer, because it did add for some, I guess, I don't know if it's the right word or not, more fun times. So where I'd like to begin is pretty much at the beginning and just talk about some of the barriers. I know personally some of the barriers for women when it comes to trying to start vaping is that a lot of moms use smoking as a meditation process. It's the only time that a mom won't be around her kids, because smoking has such a bad stigma and the secondhand effects of smoking. The moms who smoke will usually kind of go away, hide in behind the garage, and a kid won't be there. Whereas if she was peeing, the kid would be right beside her. So a lot of that stuff is, for women, I find we smoke for different reasons. So quitting would have to replicate some of those reasons and get that back, because I don't know, has anyone else seen that? Amanda within shops, Helen talking to other people, where women continue to smoke, and one of the barriers to quitting is losing that meditation time.
You know, that's not been, you know, particularly something that I've encountered in a lot of my experience with moms, but I can definitely see how that would be an issue. You know, I remember those days of having very young children, and, you know, having a moment of silence is a rare occurrence. I could definitely see how that could be the case.
And then other things of barriers is ease of use, being able to connect with someone, not being judged when they walk into a vape store. Any kind of, does anyone want to talk about that, Marion? Like,
yeah. Yeah, and I may be walking into a stereotype here, but when I started, I was pointed to YouTube videos where some young dude got up there in his bright t-shirt, and he was so folksy and so going on and on and on about his this and how this fits into this, and this is, and I wasn't brought up, I've worked with computers more than most people, but not this sort of thing. I would listen for 10 or 20 seconds thinking, get to the point. I just want to know how to unscrew this bloody thing, you know? And I'm sorry that maybe because I'm busier than they are, or was busier, or maybe I just don't have a head for listening to guys talking about how things fit together, you know? And that was one way the vape store was so valuable to me, because I honestly, if I couldn't listen to these guys, but if I went to a vape store and they said, oh, Marion, it's easy. You just put an elastic band around it and then it'll come off easily. Or you just unscrew this and then you put the new one in. And they did it for me, showed me how to do it. And I guess that's how I learned. But my generation did not learn from YouTube videos. You know, we learn from somebody showing us how. And that's how people have learned things for thousands of years, is the direct contact. And that's what worries me. Well, you know, because the vape shops are threatened. And that's what worries me about the future. If the flavors go, then most of the vape shops will go, and that one-on-one instruction and guidance will also disappear. And that to me would be tragic.
I completely agree with that. Other barriers that you find that women have that you've heard about, Helen, in talking with different people, that they have to, you know, exploring vaping or keep at vaping?
Well, one thing I wanted to pick up on is something Marion touched on, and that is, you know, nicotine is an appetite suppressant. And so for women, right, we live in a world where there's really, for most women, an unobtainable, punishing beauty standard to be thin. And so when I hear women say, I don't want to stop smoking because it suppresses my appetite and I don't want to gain weight, it always just, it's jarring. It's like the desire to stay at a certain weight and yet continue a behavior that is, you know, at some point it's going to catch up with you, right? If you keep on smoking for decades, at some point you're going to experience a smoking related disease. And it could be really serious, but the desire to remain thin, again, because we live in a world where there's a beauty standard and women have to be thin. I feel like that is the oppression of women, and continuing to use nicotine because of that, not wanting to stop. And we know the tobacco companies have marketed cigarettes to women in that way, right? Virginia Slims. And so now we have, with vaping, we have an opportunity to address that desire to stay at a certain weight, because if you want to, that's okay. But we can deliver that nicotine in a way that's much safer. So that would be an example for me of how we want to talk to women who smoke and express this, you know, it just suppresses my appetite. I can't gain weight. We know women in the modeling industry, there's a high rate of smoking among women models for obvious reasons, right? You're not going to be on the runway if you weigh a certain amount, and nicotine does its job. So I think that's something we need to talk about and target some of our messaging to women who want to continue nicotine. We have a product, not just vaping, we have snus, we have heat not burn. So that would be an area where I feel, in terms of the gender lens has to be put on it.
There's something else to that. Not long after I started vaping, I was vaping Rice Krispie treat flavor. And I took a puff of that and I thought, wow, this tastes better than the real thing, and no calories. And I mean, that's another reason. That's a really important reason, I think, why vape flavors are so important. Because I don't eat dessert, because I can get all the goodies I want in my vapor, in my taste.
Bouncing off of what Helen said, here in Canada, we inside of vape shops, having a conversation about the nicotine replacement and talking relative risks is a regulated process. So to be able to even have that conversation inside of a vape shop, God forbid online, where everyone could see it, you put yourself at risk to, I do believe that fine would get us 18 months in a federal. It's a federal fine, so that would be 18 months in prison and maybe $500,000 fine. So on top of everything else, like, you know, we have this notion that, and being National Non-Smoking Week, you see it's all over the place. Quit smoking, stop that habit, which I hate when people talk about smoking as a habit while at the same time talking about how bad it is and how dire the situation is, and then just refer to it as a habit, it adds another layer of difficulty in trying to help people. And I do think with women, and it's also that stereotype that, you know, I remember being probably about 27, 28 years old, and I had a patch on my arm trying to quit smoking. And I was made fun of, saying, what are you, an old man and can't quit on your own? So you look at now where the shame was on smoking, the shame is starting to, and like, good job to these health organizations, the body part groups that are being able to transfer that shame from smoking onto vaping so easily. I just find that's another kind of issue, is that people are, guess it's just easier to smoke because they're used to it, instead of starting vaping and dealing with another set of shame. I don't know, like, you know, and people tend to be able to tell women opinions a lot easier than men. Like, that's just as bad as smoking and all those kind of things. Anyone else see any obstacles? Yolanda?
I think I mentioned one in my introduction, just basically, you know, finding things or devices that fit your lifestyle. Not all men carry around purses or bags, so, you know, they wouldn't experience that leaking device. I think having women in vape shops is amazing. You know, you can relate to these ladies, and they see things in your perspective, like the purse, for example. Sorry. We also, another thing that I wanted to mention is, before I got on here, I wanted to find some scholarly articles just regarding women in vaping in society. And I'm going to be honest with you, 90% of the articles were give me 1 second. 90% of the articles were regarding vaping and pregnant women. I apologize. Go to the next question. I will deal with this.
Okay. Which is true, because talking about, I've never been pregnant, so I can't even talk about this. So, but when you're looking at telling women, so I guess when I was younger, they would say, if you got pregnant, you need to make sure that you don't quit cold turkey. Like, I just heard these kind of things. So I don't know if anyone else can talk about pregnancy and vaping, or pregnancy and smoking. Is there anything out there on that other than just don't do it?
What I was saying was the don't do it, and the fact that nicotine creates, women have a chance of having an underweight birth, which is understandable. There's a lot of factors that can go into that. However, my biggest research question was, how are women seen in society if they vape? Because there's so much information in regards to a woman smoking, but there's nothing in regards to a woman vaping. Everything is about the science. And Maria, like, honestly, doing this roundtable and bringing out this minority in society, in Canadian society, in American society, I think this is really important, and we need to continue to do this. Another barrier that I've seen that I was never really a big fan of is just the stereotype of who a vapor is. And this isn't just women. It's, you know, bearded, pink hair, pierced face, tattoos. I come from a very professional background. I did corporate sales, and I was in the legal aspects. And when you walk into a vape shop and you have a skirt on with a blouse and some heels, you feel out of place. And I don't know if judgment comes in on the consumer side or the store staff side, but it's just a completely different environment. It's like two different souls in this one place. So I think that is a very big barrier. For me, it was, you know, a blonde haired girl walked into a shop and you just feel, I don't know what the word would be, but, you know, there's a big burly guy behind the shop with a big beard and all this. And you're like, hi, I'm just here to get some juice. Like, there's just that uncomfortable feeling, you know, and like, don't get me wrong, there are amazing people in these shops and stuff like that, but that initial perception, like, wow, like, where am I? You know, it's not your regular convenience store that you were going to, it's the vape shop. So I think there's this perception, the stereotype of these people, and that needs to get over. Like, we need to pass that stereotype. You know, yes, there are people who are bearded and pierced and tattooed who vape, but guess what? There's also women out there with long blonde hair who likes to wear high heels and carry around a vape, and not just, you know, your little jewel, but like a big mod.
Yeah.
Like, what, you know, we got to pass this judgment. We got to get past this part, because we're here for the science. We're here to stand up for this.
A lot of that comes from the press, though. They love their stock photos of a pimply adolescent with a big, you know, vape in his or her mouth. Mm-hmm. They love that. And they, you know, and they love the pictures of the bearded guys with the t-shirts and everything. Totally. But you rarely see anybody with a shirt and tie vaping in the press. Yeah.
I think we've been guilty of that a little bit in the industry as well, because the representations that we choose are kind of a little sexist, to put it bluntly, and they fit the stereotypes that the media is presenting. When you see the bearded, tattooed guys, or the only women who are half naked and blowing vapor down their cleavage are the ones that vape. Like it's a weird representation as a woman to see that and to try to relate to that. It's a little tricky. I think these panels where you can see a great mix of people from all different backgrounds and they look all different and have different things to say, this is one of the way that we break through to more women. And I liked coming back to a point Maria was talking about earlier, emphasizing that pleasure principle. While I don't have an experience of smoking and meditating, I do have the experience of smoking as something that I do. It's an enjoyable part of my day. It's something that I can decompress with. And so all the other NRTs were looking to take that away from me with something less satisfying that contained nicotine. And to me, that was like a non-starter, because I enjoyed the process, the whole experience of smoking. And I think that if we can emphasize that you're not losing that with vaping, that if we can start communicating that there is that pleasure principle, that thing that non-smokers don't seem to think smokers get off cigarettes. Yes, there's some enjoyment there. It is a positive experience, or it can be. That's not removed if you're vaping. You can still enjoy the nicotine, and in fact, it can become a much more enjoyable experience, because now you've got flavor on top of that, and none of the ill effects that you would get from smoking. I think that emphasizing that with women could be an important way to break down that bit of a hurdle where people like me might say they're not interested in quitting smoking just because they don't want to lose one more thing, right? That kind of maybe adds to their day.
That's right. Cigarettes are smokers' friends. They're the comforter. And,
yeah.
Yeah. And this is my comforter now. And if women knew that, if people knew that this could give us much friendship and support as any cigarette, it might make a difference.
Yeah.
Some scholars are also mentioning that women they're more apt to try vaping because one of their friends or family members talk to them about vaping, whereas men find their information more within forums and online. So that is a whole other, option that women have, is reaching out to friends and family who actually vape and their experiences about it. And I think, that kind of changed my perspective and how or who I'm going to pursue in informing about vaping. Just knowing that they can build, a trusting relationship and like that. I, if you want to put it as victimized, but like I listened to a girlfriend who said that it worked, and you know what, I trusted her and I went to that vape shop and thankfully it worked for me. So I think, if the people who are watching right now, if they could even just you know, talk to your women in your life who are smoking and have that conversation about vaping. I think that's another barrier we could break down.
I just want to say I'm so grateful to be a part of this conversation. This is a very normalizing discussion for me. So many of these things I've sort of thought about in passing in my lived experience. And it's so interesting to hear, you know, other women thinking about the same thing, because a lot of the times, you know, it's always been hard for me personally to identify with that stereotypical image of who a vapor is, right? Because on the male side, you have the big burly guys with the tattoos that you guys have referenced. And then on the female side, right, the vape models, right, which is a thing unto itself. And, you know, I've never felt like I fit with any of those different images of the products and, you know, who uses them. And so this is a great conversation to me. Yeah, I've been really happy. It's kind of weird. You mentioned the purse issue. I had that problem a lot of years, but I've been happy in recent years. The devices have gotten smaller and more able to fit into a pocket, right? Because this is a silly thing, but as women, they make our pockets tiny, right? And it's so nice to have some of the smaller devices that you can put in your pocket and you know, be able to, you know, be discreet with it, especially when you're working in these professional situations. It's been nice that there's been a product shift, but it's such a great discussion to just bring out that there are all different types of people who vape and all different types of backgrounds, you know, age ranges, you know, professional orientations. It's a really great discussion.
I want to go back to pregnancy and smoking, because I don't think there's any person who is more judged than a woman who is pregnant and uses any kind of drugs, and smoking certainly. And we have to be honest. I mean, millions upon millions of us were born to women who smoked during their pregnancies, right? And we turned out okay. Now, in no way am I advocating that you smoke throughout your pregnancy, but the level of hysteria, and I would argue junk science around women who do smoke and what is going to happen. Yes, low birth weight. There are some other complications that could happen, but the reality is there's millions of us who were born to women who did smoke throughout pregnancy. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing is, in England, they are very clear about their recommendations for women who are pregnant and are smoking. And they recommend, the first line is, can you quit? And if the woman says, no, I cannot, they will offer NRTs, and vaping is one of them. And we know that vaping is 95% safer. So now we have a product, and snus, but we know that vaping has a much higher success rate among people. And so I know that some people would see this as absolute heresy, that a pregnant woman would be using any nicotine during pregnancy, right? Even vaping, even though, again, it's so much safer. And I think it just speaks to how women are judged so much more harshly for drug use than men are. And part of it is related to reproduction, right? So I just want to put that out there. The other thing is, I agree with some of the other speakers. We need research into pregnancy and vaping, and how does nicotine affect women? We know alcohol, for example, affects women differently. We know opioids affect women's bodies differently, whether it's because of our hormones or what have you. And we really need research, again, the gender lens in terms of tobacco harm reduction and vaping.
I agree. And, you know, while we're all talking, I was thinking about, like, when we're talking about research, and I was thinking about teen vaping, my head automatically assumed every single teen vapor is a male. Because, well, here in Canada, when our media grabs an interview with a kid who vapes, it's always a young man. I just feel that even that, like, we're ignoring that. If we do have, like, I mean, obviously we don't have a teen vaping crisis. Thank you, United States, for bringing that narrative over here, sending it up north. No, I'm kidding. But we just tend to always look at smoking and tobacco use and vaping through the lens of a man, no matter what age they are. And then for the people who are fighting this, and kind of my segue to get into advocacy and activism, is it's always the moms. We're up against the moms, PAVE, what is it? Parents Against Vaping. It could be just like moms against vaping. And we're butting heads with them. And I also find that women who advocate on this side are treated much differently and attacked in using very different words, and it becomes more personal. Like, I've gotten the C word, the B word, the C word lots of times. Whereas when they're talking to men, it becomes more of, okay, battle of the wits. But when someone's battling with a woman, it becomes more personal. And the digs are more on, how we look or our body parts and stuff like that. Have you guys noticed that? Like being up, out there and within the discussion in the world, and even for people on the other side, like the PAVE moms, we don't say really nice things about them. We call them crazy helicopter moms. We degrade them based on their gender as well. I found that sort of in this battle of vaping on both ends, that women are treated much harsher and have, they dig low. They battle low.
I wonder, do you remember Dr. Pipe's complaint to the Ottawa Press when you booked that room at the hotel where he was having his symposium, and he came out really quite viciously against Rights for Vapors, saying that we had infiltrated his sessions. And he was so indignant. And I wonder if it was because the head of the group was had her name Maria. I wonder if that was one of the elements of his outrage.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, he did call us a pig. So I'm not sure. This is an Order of Canada member. I always bring this up no matter what, because it's my little claim to fame. I got under the skin of an Order of Canada member to call me a pig on Twitter, because we tried to be part of the conversation and we are aggressive. And I just, again, back on that, women being aggressive are, they're not considered strong. They're considered crazy, or we need to control them, or they're being controlled, or they don't have their own opinions. These are things that people have said about me personally over the course, if I'm doing something that a male counterpart may not agree with. And, I see words like, we need to control her. Who is she speaking on behalf of? And it's never to think that my voice is mine and I'm speaking. And even just past this summer, taking on the road, we were told that certain people in political parties, let's make her look crazy. So there was all this initiative of, and I have to wonder if there was a male head, would that narrative have changed?
I think it might have. I mean, men are typically treated more generously, but I think on the other hand, we do have an advantage built in that people do take us more seriously, women more seriously, when it comes to discussions on children and health and other issues that are close to the heart, which is why I think that the aunties put women out front so much, put them in positions of prominence, because it's very difficult to hear a woman get up and talk about how she cares about the kids and hers and just shoot her down without looking like a complete asshole yourself. So I think we're always going to be hit back with these words and insults and try to get us to shut up whatever topic it's about. But I think at least in this space and other harm reduction advocacy spaces, we do have an outsized role to play by putting ourselves on the front lines, because typically women can make more progress in these areas than their male counterparts. So, I mean, just the other side of the coin, I guess.
And Brandee, just touching on your point, You know, they put these women in prominent positions. Well, with, say, for example, somebody like Maria being the spokesperson for Rights for Vapors, is that just a bigger threat to the people who we're trying to work with?
I mean, I think Maria is a tremendous threat in Canada, yes. If you're on the end side, look at position.
And you know something? When we had the last demonstration in Ottawa, I was late arriving, so I missed Maria's admonition to the crowd that everything was to be dignified and stayed, and we were just going to stand there and just state our case. And that to me was a very mature and civilized and therefore feminine way of handling it. And of course, I didn't know that. And so I was standing beside the guy dressed as a dinosaur, protesting against fossil fuels. And so when he started yelling out, "What do we want?" I couldn't help but call out, "Apple." And but the point was, my point was that we did have some of the MPs, the politicians, come out. They saw us and they looked at us, but we weren't behaving like idiots or young men with with the orange hair and the tattoos. We were dignified, intelligent adults standing there, voicing our opinion politely. And I think that was really wise.
Yeah.
And will get us further.
I know in Canada, our organizations, our groups are led mostly by males. And I think finding Amanda on Twitter and watching what she's done as a woman and leading a larger group of business owners and stuff. I mean, like, I would love to hear your perspective and how you got into this role, because for us from this side, our two organizations are very heavily male led, and, you know, maybe encouraging women to join these boards here in Canada.
Yeah, I would say so, because, just a personal reflection here, we do have to acknowledge that, agree or disagree, the narrative has been dominated, around moms and children and all of that. And, kids should not be vaping. Absolutely. Like, you're not going to find a mother on the planet to disagree with that. Right. But there is something to be said that, all of these people vaping, a vast majority of them have children, they have sons, they have daughters, that need their moms to be around for them. They don't need their mothers, smoking these cancer sticks and having all of these health problems. So I think that's an important perspective as a mom and as somebody who uses these products, to be able to say, not all mothers agree that vaping is evil. Some of us are very grateful that our children didn't grow up watching us smoke, because we have these products to use. Our children are seeing us making better choices and really, able to be there for them. And so, I think that's a valuable perspective that a lot of moms that are involved in advocacy can bring to the table to counteract some of this one-sided narrative. As far as, being a female leading an advocacy organization, it's interesting. That wasn't a spot that was given to me, right? That was a spot that I created. It was, me and a couple of other women sitting back, watching what was going on in United States advocacy, watching all of the people that were being left out of that and forgotten about and not included in that. And really saying, we could do this so much better, because there are some real blind spots that aren't being addressed. There are some people that aren't being spoken to. There are some people that aren't being included in this. And, we really started this very grassroots effort to bring more people into the advocacy umbrella, especially in the small business community, a lot of the female-owned businesses. And so it was interesting. We built something from scratch that didn't exist before. Not to engage in male bashing, but, I've dealt with a lot of these male advocates, and a lot of the times, the way that they think something needs to be done, is the way that they're going to do it. And they don't necessarily want that input from another perspective. And, so for us, we really weren't intending to create this female-led organization. There were just a bunch of us women that were working together behind the scenes because we saw a job that needed to be done. And so we created the infrastructure in which to do that. And the response to it has been incredible. And I think the work that we've been able to do has spoken for itself. And I think that, more and more people are being attracted to that and are wanting to get involved in that. But what I would say is that, as a female that engages in advocacy, it's a powerful perspective. Not only, I think people tend to respond when they see a strong, intelligent woman who is coming in armed with the facts and on a mission. Right. And I've had a lot of people really cheer a lot of the work that we've been doing, and I think being a woman and being a mom and being a female business owner is definitely all a part of that perspective that we bring to the table. And so I would say, don't wait around to get invited to the boys club, create your own club. That's really what we did.
I love that. Create your own club. Just go in there. And I think the biggest thing for me was I had to stop listening and adding value to the opinions. You should. And not, you may want to consider. It's always very aggressive. You should, you need to, you're doing it wrong. You need to do it this way. One of the biggest things I was told when I first got involved in advocacy is you're too emotional and you got to take the emotion out of the table. And I'll be honest, the emotion is what has brought me the most success. It's who I am. You can't take me out of that. And being emotional is not a woman thing. It's not a gender thing. It's a human thing. And if you're comfortable with expressing your emotions, that's who you are. And if that's part of you. And I just found for me was that I am not going to, I can't listen to other people. So I'm just going to do my own thing. And that's how, for us, Rights for Vapors started. It's a movement. There's no organized, it just happens. Everyone is allowed to join in. So, but kudos to you, Amanda, for creating that and leading that, because I think it's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's, there is a part of it as a female that is very difficult. It is sort of stereotypical, but sometimes things are stereotypes because they're generally true. As being a mom, having a family, having, a marriage and, a household to run and all of these responsibilities, school children. It's interesting as I start my day off every day, waking up with my kids, helping them pack lunches, getting them ready for school. And then I drop them off and I'm, on the phone, talking to some bill sponsor, a PR consultant or something. And then I squeeze all of this work in until about 2 p.m. And then I go pick my children up from school and bring them home and help them do their homework. And, after they go to bed, I'll go right back to work. And so it's definitely a challenge, every time I have to, travel out of state to go testify at some hearing, that's time that I'm not with my kids. And it is really hard. And, sometimes I think that I wish that society would catch up with, working mothers and, some of those struggles that we have to go through that I think sometimes, for men, there's not that dilemma, that guilt that they carry if they have to take time away from their family for their work. But for women, it is something that at least I struggle with as a woman. And so, it's very important to me when I'm working on this, I give it 110% because that is time that I'm taking away from my family. And so it's tough. That work-life balance as a woman is also a very hard factor to deal with.
Absolutely. We have a question from Janine Timmons. So we can go around and everyone can give their answer. I'm inspired by each woman here today. May I ask what inspires each of you to to continue advocating for vaping even through difficult times. Helen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I wanted to say something first about,
for sure,
women and being advocates. And I mean, there's a whole history, at least in the United States, probably in Canada too, of women being involved in issues around drugs, right? So we had the women's temperance movement in the United States, right? Who really believed that by prohibiting alcohol, that would lead to a decrease in domestic violence. Well, it didn't. And so I think the newest iteration, I mean, then there was Mothers Against Drunk Driving that have done some really important things. I don't agree with all of their initiatives, but I agree with some of them. Attention must be paid to that. And I think the latest iteration really is PAVE and the Momvacates, Parents Against Vaping Electronic Cigarettes. And I don't attack, I mean, I've written stuff about PAVE, but I don't attack them based on gender. I actually attack them based on class, because these women have a profound lack of solidarity with working class women, poor women, and women of color, who, by the way, have the highest rates of smoking and morbidity and mortality. They want to prohibit products that would help that group of women, again, working class, poor women, women of color. So that's where I feel we need to engage with an organization like PAVE, that you're actually hurting a whole group of women by trying to ban these products. I also think that they think about smoking and nicotine as that's something that low class people do. And they are very wealthy. I mean, they move in the circles of Michael Bloomberg, and they look at nicotine and drug use in a way that I think is very judgmental. And it's like, well, our kids aren't going to be addicted to nicotine. That's other people. And so there's just this profound lack of solidarity. So I think class is a huge issue here, as well as gender, that I think is important to look at. And sometimes women are on the right side of these issues, and sometimes they're really on the wrong side. The thing that keeps me going is that I know we're going to win. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Let's get real here. Vaping is never going to go away. You can try to pass all this legislation. It's not, it might work temporarily, but the technology is there. It's absolutely brilliant. Where in a situation in the United States where we're legalizing more drugs that were illegal, cannabis, psychedelics, people are vaping cannabis. People are working, we're not going to legalize cocaine, but people are working on a vaporizer for cocaine to reduce the harms of smoking it. So, and then psilocybin and the other psychedelics. And so nicotine clearly has benefits. Its safety profile is amazing if you use a safer nicotine product. So at least in the United States, I'm not sure about the situation in Canada, we're moving, it's in fits and starts, to a society where we understand we live in a world of drugs and they're never going to disappear. We have to find a way to reduce the harm. So that's the thing that keeps me going.
Very nice. Just so you know, here in Canada, we're moving towards a safe supply for hard drugs, decriminalization. There's a huge movement. And obviously cannabis is legal everywhere, including edibles. And it's very interesting. Cannabis regulations and vaping regulations, there's a lot more leeway. Cannabis stores will have a lot more freedoms than people who sell vaping products here in this country. Marion, what keeps you continuing to advocate during these stressful times?
Well, two things really. One is, as I mentioned before, I was in my doctor's office just for a routine checkup last week, and I mentioned vaping. 8 years ago, she was, oh, we don't know enough about it. It could be very harmful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But after a few years of checking my lungs, and they had gone from at COPD risk to perfect, she said, if I felt it was helping me, then that was, she would support me on that. When I was there on Wednesday, she sort of had gone back a bit. When I said vaping, she humphed a bit. And I said, but you know what? I feel there are thousands of people dying every year from smoking. You see my health, and I would like the same thing for other smokers. And that is why I am an activist. I think every smoker deserves a chance to escape and enjoy the same triumph that I felt. And that leads into the second thing, which is, well, I've said this before, all my life I have wanted a holy grail to follow, a quest for something wonderful, makes my life have a purpose. And I found it in vaping. And so, and also I enjoy it. I like the attention, and I like talking to people.
I just want everyone to know here is that if there is a negative article about vaping, Marion Burt, you will see her comment on that article, no matter where it is. And she'll also comment on the positive stuff as well. But she is right there emailing anybody and everybody her position and correcting them without any shame. And kudos to you, Marion, because that's the way we should all be, without shame, sharing the truth.
And there are perks. You know what? My answer on Quora, the online question and answer thing, is, I think it was originally, "Is vaping dangerous?" And I wrote a reply to that, and it's almost 1,000 upvotes now.
Wow.
And you get a lot of satisfaction from things like that.
Amanda, did you, what keeps you advocating? Because I mean, COVID, I don't know what COVID was like in Arizona, but here in Canada, we've been in some form of lockdown since 2020.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't think we've had it quite that bad, but COVID has certainly brought its own share of challenges to advocacy. There were some good things for advocacy that came out of COVID, with the ability to include more people in testimonies. A lot of virtual hearings have been taking place, the ability to not have to get on a plane to go meet with a legislator on the other side of the country, the ability to just hop on a Zoom and have that conversation. But as far as your original question, that's a long answer that I will try not to monopolize time on. I could probably spend 3 hours talking about the why very easily. But, first and foremost, I've lost people in my life to smoking. I was a smoker. My husband was a smoker. And I know what these products have the potential to do for people. My stepfather died from lung cancer from a lifetime of smoking. And I know that if this, product was around for him, that it could have been something that saved him from an unnecessary and early death. Another thing that motivates me very much is, our small business is my husband and I's life work. It was a dream that we worked a very long time to create and build and sustain. We have about 36 people who work for us. And, some of those people have been there since the very beginning 10 years ago. And, they're a part of our family in a way. And so, being able to continue to employ them and, pay them good wages, is important to me. A lot of it is a fight for the truth, because I'm so angry about all of the lies that have been told, all of the money that has been spent to fuel this misinformation, various prohibitions around the world. I'm also motivated by what Helen said. I think we are going to win. I think it's a matter of continuing to fight and never giving up, because it's a matter of time. If you look at some of these historical struggles for these causes of justice and truth, they're long. They take a long time. You know, the fight for legal cannabis, the fight for gay rights, you know, all of these, you know, big fights, they're not things that are won overnight. They require a lot of sustained and dedicated work. And so I'm committed to see that through to the long run, because I am determined to see, you know, the truth prevail here, to see the science prevail, to see actual real public health prevail. So it's a combination of a lot of factors. And, you know, also, you know, as Marion said, I enjoy this tremendously. You know, I think it's a very important and rewarding thing to fight for. And so I get a lot out of this fight. I think I get out of it as much as I give to it, for sure.
Brandee, what keeps you going?
I'd have to say, number one, the vape community has been what has kept me going. I've been a little quiet actually in the last couple months, kind of publicly. I've had to pull back a bit to take care of myself and my health and a few other things. But I find what keeps drawing me back is the community. Well, you this time, Maria, because I wasn't going to say no to a women's panel on vaping, but generally just the conversations that I'm having with vapors every day, and the conversations that I'm kind of around the edges of. It's, you know, for all of the kind of jokes about vape fam and kind of what a rowdy little group we can be, it's quite amazing to me, the community that has built up over this common interest. In just a matter of years. This is a really tight community that feels deeply for each other, that has learned about each other's families, that helps out in times of crisis. And like so many other people in the community, I've really bonded with these people. And I know that we don't all have the capacity to fight all of the time. So when we do have that energy, we need to be in there for the others who can't be in there at that moment. And so I think that that I get a lot of my energy from the community itself.
Oops, I forgot to unmute myself. That was really nice. That was nice to hear. And I'm really happy you agreed to participate. I was excited to be able to reach out to you when you said yes. Yolanda, what is your inspiration? Like, what inspires you to continue doing this?
Well, during these hard times, I don't know, I just I know it works, and since the beginning, like, we've seen it work. We fought municipally, and Maria, you won. We fought provincially, and we got what we were fighting for. Now we're fighting federally, and I know how hard we're fighting. I've put blood, sweat, and tears into this. And what inspires me is we had a goal to get as many signatures as possible on the RV. And the amount of people that you met and you talked to, and they were so open to sharing how successful they were to switch to vaping, that's inspiring. You know, it wasn't the regular people you chat with that vape. Like, I had the opportunity, this once in a lifetime opportunity to meet thousands of vapors across Quebec and Ontario, and to know that, you know, Rights for Vapors was out there representing those people, and know what happens in the background and how much fighting really takes place. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm inspired for those people that I met. Like, and I can't thank them enough. And I can't thank Marion enough for doing what she does. And she comes out to these rallies, and she's my co-captain until we get to the place where she can get out and go and chat. And then there's Maria, and Maria, you know, you just said that you're not supposed to, you're supposed to remove expression. Well, every time you shed tears, man, I'm shedding tears on the other side of the camera too, because I feel that. I feel it pouring out of you. So yeah, I think I haven't followed a lot of the American advocacy movements, and I apologize for that. But honestly, in Canada and what we've done, it's the community, but honestly, it's those people that I met during COVID, during the times where we were all these lockdowns and threats of lockdowns and stuff like that. Those people still came out and they still met with us because vaping was important to them.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, I'm going to leave everybody with one last question because I think it's really important that voices get heard. And the more voices that are heard by people, by regulators and stuff like that, the more change and impact. One piece of advice, we do a lot of emails here. We email our member of parliament, who is our representative in government. If we just go around and just let people, like let women or women and men know what's one thing that someone should put in a letter that they write to the government in regards to, you know, our upcoming flavor ban, our proposed flavor ban. What should they write? What story should they, like, you know, any advice on what to write or what to share with a legislator? Marion, do you want to start? You write a lot of those letters, so you.
Yeah. I usually start telling my story, telling them that I am, you know, a generation that was told smoking was good. And then I was shamed and told that quitting smoking was easy with these safe and effective pharmaceutical products. And I dutifully tried them all and they didn't work. And then I found vaping, and I am now smoke-free, and I'm healthy, and I'm enjoying my life. And then I go through and I usually rebut the points that they have in whatever document they've issued. And then I say something scathing about how the lives of adults in Canada and their families should not be sacrificed to a teenage fad that is past its due date. And then I sign it sincerely.
Oh my God, Marion, you're so funny. Amanda, you deal with a lot of, I guess, regulatory. Oh, I can't speak today. You talk to a lot of politicians, you write letters. What are some of the things that you make sure that you like that are included in there that kind of get you noticed?
Well, so it's interesting. So there are a lot of components to that, you know, and I think it depends on the perspective that you're coming from. The most important thing is to do them, right? Because we don't have enough vapors who take the time to do these kinds of calls to action. And, you know, I don't know the numbers in Canada off the top of my head, but in the States, we've got 15 million Americans who use these products, and a very small minority of those people actually participate. And so, you know, number one, just taking the time to do it is the most important step. But, you know, as Marion said, for consumers, I think it's really important to share your story and, you know, talk about the impact that it's had on your life. You know, what it was like for you, you know, when you were trying to quit without vaping, what it means to your family, what it means to the other people in your life, how, you know, all the various ways that it's created positive changes for you. And then, you know, to talk about for you very specifically, what would happen if these products were not available, you know, because, you know, we say that we talk about the people who would return to smoking, the people who would go to the black market, but actually hearing that from, you know, everyday vapors, I think is very important, you know, and then obviously, you know, for the small business owners to talk about, you know, employees, the wages that are paid, the positive impact that's made to the local economy and your community is very important. And then, you know, for those of us that are, you know, blessed to speak on behalf of associations or movements, I think coming armed with data and facts is of paramount importance, because there is so much science and so much data that is on our side that doesn't get the same amount of attention as some of these bogus studies and some of these bogus numbers that are concocted for PR purposes from the other side. So, you know, a hybrid of all of those things, I would say is very important, but most important thing is just to engage.
Helen, I wanted to ask you, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what is one thing that people can do to help I guess, the marginalized communities, the women who, like, women to, like, you know, how do we start bringing up this conversation when we see women in marginalized communities, poorer women of color, like smoking, and trying to engage with them and talk to them about vaping?
One of the things that I think is important to include, at least in the United States, is when we talk about vaping and tobacco harm reduction, it's about health justice and racial justice in the United States. Again, look at who is still smoking in the United States. Disproportionately, low income, people of less education, Indigenous. The levels of smoking on reservations are incredibly high among people with mental health issues, people who are houseless, people who use drugs. So for me, if I'm talking to anybody or I'm writing something, I'm going to include that this struggle is about health justice, having access to products that are infinitely safer than the combustible cigarette. And everybody should have access to that, especially vulnerable populations. So that's something that I'm always front loading in conversations. And, you know, if you are interested in health justice or racial justice, this is what has to be done, that people have to have access to these products. And then just building on what Amanda said, it's really important to talk about the science, because we know that vaping is 95% safer than smoking, and being very clear about that. It's not a debate anymore, actually. It's a fact. And it's been proven. There's so many studies and talking about that. And even just because maybe people don't even know, the FDA has, you know, they're saying they have approved a product, it's not a very good one, and looked at the science and the whole PMTA process, which nobody wants to talk about, but the rigorous science, and they have authorized, actually not approved, authorized a vaping product. So even the FDA, so letting people know that, again, racial, health justice, and just here is the science, not a debate anymore. It's vastly safer, and we need to move in that direction if you're really interested in saving lives.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody. One of the key thing is, from like everything today, like, let's continue to have conversations with other women, help other women, talk about options, talk about vaping, and continue to talk to politicians and advocate in your own way. I want to say thank you to all 5 of you who have joined me today. This is the first time I'm doing a roundtable discussion like this. I think it was fabulous. I learned something from each and every one of you. It was my honor to have you guys join me. Thank you so much. I will make sure that we put up your Twitter handles or your social media handles on our website so people can follow you. And you know, on the journey that you're doing with all the advocating and activism. We have lots of thank yous in the chat and everything like that. This was fabulous. I'm so happy we did this. It is National Non-Smoking Week. I want to point out that some of the flavor bans in Canada, one of the quickest flavor bans is in Nunavut, which is an entire Indigenous community, 70% smoking rates, 70% of the population smokes, and they put out a full flavor ban saying that they were going to help people not smoke. These are some of the injustices that are happening in our own country, and we're going to continue to fight. Use your voice, use emotion, use passion, use what you know, and thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Awesome. It's been a real pleasure talking with you all.
Yeah, I